Don't worry, this isn't actually another comparison video. Geometry Dash and Obbies are close. Like, in terms of connections, pretty darn close. Out of all the games that are connected with GD, Obbies are likely the most, at least among their very own top players. If you want some cool examples, did you know Zoink played Obbies for a wee bit? Did you know that a lot of TCD played Obbies for a wee bit? How about Z Levi, the guy who beat Flamewall, or even Laser? Wow, that's pretty cool. Now let's ask them which is harder. As soon as I hear you utter that sentence, I will find you. And once I do, I will send you to the darkest pits of hell, where you will burn for all eternity. The biggest similarity they have is that it's not merely about adding challenges or speedrunning levels as fast as you can. It's about whether it's even possible to beat in the first place. If you're a casual person, you probably picture obbies like this, or maybe this. If so, then oh boy, you have a long way to go. So buckle up, or pay the price. You're probably here for my GD vs Obbies video, and I'll be honest, the points I was trying to make were pretty rushed, so I think I need to clear up any misconceptions in a better fashion while debunking common arguments, cause let's be honest, nobody's gonna shut up about this, so we might as well do it right. The part where I introduced them both, I got a lot of comments saying that there are in fact very long GD levels that exist. Take Eon for example. I was talking about the average length of these platformers. Obviously there's going to be some longer ones, but it is pretty cool to see that even GD levels can reach the length of a pretty long tower. Not that it matters though. Dishonorable mentions to a ton 618 LARPers. I'm joking. You're all lovely people. But look, here's a footage of me building a single jump in Roblox that's guaranteed to be harder than ton 618. Alright, there we go. Well, actually, the bricks aren't even anchored. Well, there you go. Well, actually, you could just lag high jump on the landing platform. Well, there you go.
Well, actually, if you use the quantum mechanical angular velocity of the Riemann hypothesis, you can articulate a molecular velocity to propel Z towards the landing platform.
Is this enough freaking distance for you? The point I was trying to make there is that you can literally make anything as hard as you want. Yes, the same fact applies to Geometry Dash. Doesn't matter if it's 2D or not, you can still make your level infinitely hard. I think Theo's actually made a really good video about this, so if you want to check it out, links in the description. But basically both platformers can go all the way to infinity because guess what? You can always add one more jump at the very end. I see a lot of people say that Obbies have a naturally higher skill ceiling potential than Geometry Dash, but since we proved that you can make anything literally as hard as you want, then how could there be a skill ceiling in the first place? There can't be. The only thing that matters right now is the level of skill we're at currently. Does this mean that one day we're gonna see someone beat a level like this? Of course not. Obviously there exists a human limit. It's just that we'll never know what that limit will look like. Best example I can think of is this. What is 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 and so on to infinity? Well, you might think the answer is infinity. Well, you're wrong. It's actually 1. Even the seemingly infinite question has a limit. Now imagine each number is, instead, a GD level, ordered by difficulty. What becomes the final GD level in this case? Well, we don't know. And we'll never know because there will always be a harder level. But there is a limit. Yes, this also applies to obbies, don't get ahead of yourselves. But the hardest obby is still harder because it requires more inputs, and 3D is harder than 2D, right? Well, here's my counterpoint. If the hardest obby is harder than the hardest GD level because of the sole fact that it involves more keys, then what about GD platformers? They objectively require more keys to input, so by that logic, this has to be harder than Digging Space 2. But it's not even close. The amount of inputs required literally doesn't matter, right? Or could you argue it's the reason why obbies are improving at a similar rate despite having on average a 10 times smaller community? But actually, Roblox has been around for way longer. Yeah, but not Roblox Obbies. They're very different. And even then, the first actually difficult obby wasn't even made until a decade later, which even then didn't even form a community until sometime in 2018. So if you're gonna compare which community had more time to develop, it's gonna be Geometry Dash. Both communities always had this problem of Division 1 LARPing, where they act like they know a whole lot more than they actually do. You've seen it a lot in GD, where people sound so confident that a level is harder than the other, even though the hardest is Aku. Except this time, people are so sure that one game is harder than the other. I can kind of understand the demonless LARPers, especially if we know how GOAT debates work, so I think people who debate stuff like Zoink vs Popoff or Amethyst vs TS2 are not Satan, because there is a way to somewhat prove that sort of comparison. I don't mind people who prefer a certain game over another for a general reason that may or may not be valid. I think that's just about most people in the GD versus Obbies debate, so I love all of you. What I do mind though are the people who aren't good at either game, yet they want to get all elitist and nerdy and just start shipping out random numbers like they're the gospel. Oh, it's not even close to the top 20. Oh, it's not even in the main list. Oh, it's not even top 300. You do not know this. You don't. And you will never know this. Never. And yeah, that's just about it for explaining misconceptions. Let's make peace now, shall we? This video will mostly be focusing on Roblox, since people still think there's no such thing as difficult games on there. Yeah, in case you've been living under a rock, the hardest obbies don't look like this. Or this. They look like this. What the hell is this? Don't worry, I'll explain everything. You know how most Roblox games can either be an R6 or an R15? Well, pro obbies are only played in R6 because of one simple reason. It's universally consistent. No matter what you wear or what outfit you put on, the physics will remain the same. While on the other hand, R15 has a bunch of different animations that can also have completely different physics. Therefore, aside from those brain rot games that kids like to play, you'll always see an R6 avatar.
But obbies are for kids, bro. The hardest obby is Tower of Hell, bro.
Well, let me introduce you to the actual big guns. But the most popular one by far is Eternal Towers of Hell. It's a game that has many obbies in them in the form of towers, which are made up of 10 floors each. The gameplay can either be very easy or very, very difficult. So basically, there are several types of gameplay that span throughout pretty much every hard obby. Those being wraparounds, trusses / ladders, and client objects. Wraparounds are pretty much just that, wraparounds. You wrap around an object and you make it to the other side. But this can come in practically infinite forms. Popular example would be Tower of True Skill. Its gameplay is entirely made up of wraparounds that come in different forms. They can come in many different shapes and sizes, but they're basically the foundation of modern top obbies. But how about the stuff that people climb? Those are usually thanks to trusses / ladders. Trusses are basically these cool looking things that you can climb on. It's usually in fixed size, but you can still do a lot of cool stuff using them, such as this, or even this. Ladders, on the other hand, can come in many different shapes or sizes, but they're kinda just regular bricks stacked on top of each other. Client objects are objects that have a unique gimmick to them. Common ones include spinning platforms, falling platforms, beat blocks, conveyors, yada yada yada. There's a lot of them. Basically anything with unique property can be considered a client object. These are only found in tower obbies because tiered obbies are dead. I'm sorry if I didn't go into complete detail, that sort of stuff will be saved for a special video, but the point is, obbies are very versatile in gameplay. But how do they become really, really difficult? There are several ways to make a jump more difficult. You could make it longer, you can make it tighter, you can make it wider, all sorts of creative ways to make it harder. When these jumps that are already hard enough get put in a tower obby that only just gets longer and longer and longer and longer, I think we can see why some people are led to believe that obbies are one of the hardest things out there. It's simply one hell of a task to deal with seemingly endless jumps that require different maneuvers. And as we've established before, there's no limit to how hard you can make a single jump. So you could have super short towers with extremely hard gameplay, or super long towers that is an ultimate endurance test, each jump requiring a different strategy to pull off. But how about Geometry Dash? What pushes this game's limits when the hardest levels only rely on one input? Is it length, timing, precision, reaction? Well, did you know that back then it was actually none of these things? If you looked at some of the oldest demon rated levels, they all had one thing in common: confusion. Back then, difficulty was actually rated based on how many misdirects levels had, rather than actually difficult clicks. It was a very weird era where actually difficult levels were very frowned upon and dislike bombed to oblivion. Obviously nowadays we know better, but even then it's not that simple. There are several game modes that aren't as straightforward, but it's not just about a single input. Sometimes you'll have to hold that input for a certain amount of time and release it perfectly. The most obvious example being the robot. There's also things like orbs, jump pads, portals, things that require some timing. But apart from that, this game isn't really complex, but that doesn't mean it can't be extremely difficult. The measurement used for how hard a single click is what's commonly called a frame perfect. It's basically a click that requires you to click at a specific frame. For example, a 60 FPS frame perfect would be a 1 frame window on 60 FPS. Or at least that's how it was back then. The thing is, no one actually plays top levels on these low refresh rates, so a 60 FPS frame perfect would be way easier on, say, 360 FPS. Nowadays, people go off by a frame window, which is how many frames of leniency that click has. It is usually measured in 240 FPS, and if you do the maths, you could deduce that a 60 FPS frame perfect is a 4 frame, 80 FPS for 3 frames, 120 FPS for 2 frames, and, well, 1 frame for 240. This is the standard method for measuring how hard a click is, but even then, it's not 100% accurate because of things like frame alignments, click between frames, frame windows being harder in certain game modes, whatever. I really can't be bothered with all that. But are these clicks directly correlated to how hard a level is? Not exactly. Obviously, there's other factors like length, for example, but I think that anything smaller than a 3 frame window could matter in size since it's just so utterly ridiculous. If you're curious on how many frame perfects the hardest level has, it has around 40 60 FPS frame perfects, 32 80 FPS frame perfects, and 8 120 FPS frame perfects. In a lot of cases, the harder the clicks are, the harder the level is. But for obbies, that's where it gets really weird. The amount of fake top 1s that has ever existed is actually comical. A low mid horrific just got verified? Nope, it's actually way easier. A humanly impossible obby just got verified? Nope, it's not even the hardest tower. An obby that took the best player at the time over 200 hours to complete? Not even top 4. A literal peak unreal / nil just got verified? Mid unreal. Like, what? Why is everything so much easier than what it was supposed to be? These obbies weren't even nerfed by much, if at all, yet they magically just become easier? And we're still falling for this phenomena to this day? Well, there are some reasons why. A lot of people who aren't skilled enough to beat the tower tend to just take it for granted, without realizing there will always be ways to do the tower better than they do. These are simply just referred to as strats. When a top player grinds a top obby, they will always try to find ways to make nearly impossible jumps much easier. This could be through a method, an alignment, or whatever. But even then, you'll never know for certain if the strat you're using is the best one, since it's a matter of trying out random stuff until something works. So once a tower gets verified, other people do the same thing, and can very often find even better strats than the verifier. This is why over time, towers can become easier the more people play it. Does this mean that every obby in existence can get stratted down to oblivion? Not exactly. At the end of the day, you still need enough skill to pull off everything at once, and with some towers being over an hour long, have fun doing that. I decided to make this video because despite addressing almost everything that had to be addressed, there were still some misconceptions about what I was trying to portray, as well as many people not being familiar with Roblox Obbies as a whole. If you want to see an in-depth analysis as to which game is actually harder, well, the video is right here. Yeah, that's it. See ya.